When we start healing and releasing our trauma adaptations, there's a moment where we look at the life we created and see the contrast. What do we do in those moments? In this episode, I discussed a part of healing that no one talks about. Welcome to the Abundance Hack Show, Season 4, where we are focusing on mastery. The last 3 seasons, I gave you the information. Now, we're focusing on integrating it into our lives and embodying it. If you are ready to master your thoughts, emotions, and patterns to feel whole, fulfilled, and really grounded in who you are without dimming your shine so you can live the abundant life that you truly desire, then you are in the right place. Hey M&Ms, thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. What are you manifesting in your life today? In this episode, I want to talk about contrast. When we start to peel the layers back, release the blocks, release the programming, release the trauma adaptations, and take a really good look at our lives, sometimes it's like, holy shit, this is the life that I created? We see the contrast of what it is we truly want and what we actually have. So this contrast moment, I feel, is extremely uncomfortable, and people usually don't talk about it during the healing process, especially when they talk about manifestation. They don't talk about how it feels to notice the contrast of what it is that you truly want and what it is that you actually have. And I talk about this a little bit in the calibration period episode. So if you didn't check out that episode, definitely check it out, because I feel like calibration and contrast go hand in hand. So with the calibration period, you are finding your new flow. So when you release the blocks and programming and the trauma adaptations, you're finding your new flow and settling into, grounding into who it is you are, grounding into your values, and you have to find that new balance. And when I say trauma adaptations, I'm referring to the coping mechanisms that we adapted at a young age to keep us safe and most of the time sane. So we adapt these coping skills, and then they're kind of patterns we have that we don't necessarily need in our adult lives, but we have to reprogram our thought process and our perspective to not have those coping mechanisms. So when I went through my last few layers of peeling back the layers of blocks and crap standing in the way of what I truly desired, and I took a really good look at my life without the rose-colored glasses, I asked myself, like, how did I create this superficial life? Now, obviously, I have to be gentle with myself because a lot of it is societal programming and social media. Someone actually posted today, this was so powerful. They said, we are a sad generation with happy pictures. And I was like, oof, that hit home. We are a sad generation with happy pictures. So a lot of me feeling like I created this superficial life obviously is not my doing. It's just kind of how society is today with social media and how we put our highlight reel of a life, on the gram, when a lot of times people are dealing with a lot of challenges, but you only see the smiles and the happiness and the glitz and glam. So I'm someone who's always wanted connection and compassion, but when I did the inner work to really understand what compassion and empathy actually is, I looked at my life and was like, damn, I don't have compassion in my life. And I saw a ton of contrast, and it made me sad. It made me sad. So there's a moment in the healing process where you may feel sad. You may even feel some shame around the life that you've created. Like, damn, how did I create this? And I'm not saying I'm sad about the life that I created, but I do think that this is an important process to discuss, because in this moment of contrast and calibration, we can tend to resort back to our old ways because they're comfortable. So when you have that moment of contrast, you have to keep going forward, keep healing, keep growing. It's really, really important to point that out. And it definitely makes sense that I don't have a lot of compassion in my life because my mom wasn't compassionate. So when I learned what compassion actually is, then I looked around at the people in my life and I'm like, no one in my life is compassionate. My family isn't compassionate. My friends are not compassionate. And this is obviously not to judge them. So Brené Brown says compassion and empathy are learned skills. And if you didn't learn it at a young age, then you don't even know that you're not compassionate. So society doesn't teach us how to be compassionate. You don't learn how to be compassionate in school. These are things that you have to actually seek out. And Brené Brown talks about empathy misses. And I mention it all the time on this show because you guys know I love me some Brené Brown. And she talks about the empathy misses. So a lot of the empathy misses are what people do when they think that they're being compassionate. I was not compassionate. I didn't know these things until I actually sought out programs, doing the intimacy coaching, doing the Brené Brown program, having, a therapist to teach me what nurturing actually feels like when we grow up with parents that are critical or parents that are not around because they're working, or absent parents. We don't know what nurturing actually means and feels like. And so when we don't know it, we attract and are attracted to people who are also not compassionate. And so I looked around in my life and I'm like, I don't have any compassionate people in my life. And I know, so Brené Brown talks about in her last book, this concept of near enemy. I used to know intuitively, like, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel supportive, but I didn't have the language to actually name what it was that I was feeling. And then when I did her program and, did the Dare to Lead certification, then I was able to put a name to, like, oh, this is why this connection always felt this way, or this is why this response never felt good to me, because it's an empathy miss and it's not actually compassion. And so it made so much sense to me. And now having this new awareness and clarity, I was able to look around at the people in my life and say, like, I don't have any compassionate people in my life. And that moment of noticing the contrast, it was uncomfortable. It actually hurts. It's disappointing. And so I feel like when I started my healing journey, like years and years and years ago, I noticed it. But what I would do is I would always go back and be like, oh, I would make excuses for the people in my life. Like, oh, I'm just tripping and it's me, because like I said in a previous episode, like, I've been gaslit so much in my life where people are like, oh, you just want so much. You have such high expectations. You're high maintenance. Like, you just ask for so much. And like, it's like nothing anyone does is good enough for you. But I'm like, being compassionate isn't asking for too much. Doing what you say you're going to do isn't asking for too much. Being a good person should not be asking for too much. But it's just that people will blame it on you before they take accountability. Let's just say that. So when I started learning about compassion and empathy and proper ways to show up for people and hold space for people and nurture people, I'm like, wait, I don't have any of this in my life. And that moment of contrast, it's actually kind of sad. So it makes the healing process feel even harder. Like, we're already having to face our stuff. And I had to face, like, I wasn't a compassionate person. I didn't respond in a compassionate way either, so but the thing is, I showed up to learn how to be compassionate. And we can't force the people in our lives to do the same work that we're doing. Someone else may not care about being compassionate. The work that I do, like, I have to learn how to properly hold space for people. And someone else may not care about learning any of Brene Brown's material. And that's okay. They're entitled to that. However, one of the things that I realized in my life is that I in this phase, in this chapter right now, I need compassionate, supportive, and emotionally safe people in my life. And when we really honor what it is that we need and don't shift out of it to accommodate the people in our lives, that process is uncomfortable. And no one talks about this when they talk about healing. Or if they do, if you've read a book where they talked about this contrast period, and I know that Abraham Hicks mentions contrast, but not in this way. And she's like, contrast is a good thing because it lets you know, it helps you clarify what it is that you want. But I'm referring to it in a way of sometimes we notice the contrast and it causes us to want to retreat back to old ways, to hold on to people in our lives, to hold on to situations, to hold on to environments sometimes because we want to hold on to the things that are known and comfortable to us. So it's a very uncomfortable thing to truly honor what it is that we need, even if that means separating or disconnecting from something that we love, something or someone that we love. And what we tend to do is shift and waver to hold on to people. But what's important is that in order to be authentic and self-loyal, we have to truly be grounded in who we are, what we want, what we value, and not shift so people can like us or love us or won't leave us. If we shift who we are to keep people, that's abandonment issues. And so when I say peeling back the layers to release the trauma adaptations, releasing those abandonment issues and being grounded in who you are. And if me being grounded in who I am and my values and what I believe in causes you to not want to deal with me, bye. So this has been a really powerful lesson for me, and it's something that I don't think people talk about, because when you go through a healing journey, a transformation, an ascension, there is a disconnect with the people in your life. And it's sad, it makes me sad. But at the same time, for years, I would always kind of go back and be like, oh no, well, this is not important to me, blah, blah, blah. But the more you get tuned into your intuition and you listen to that little voice that's like, this doesn't feel good, the more you start to become self-loyal, the more your intuition is going to communicate to you. If you just brush off or suppress that little feeling inside that's like, this is not right, this doesn't feel good, the more you connect to it, the stronger your intuition is going to be. The more you stuff it down, the less your intuition is going to communicate to you. And then it turns into physical ailments in your body. You start having aches and pains. And trust me, I deal with this every single day in my business, helping people notice the aches and pains in their body because their intuition is literally screaming at them. And I get it, because I'm going through this contrast in my life right now where I'm being really, I'm setting super strong boundaries and I'm being really clear on what it is I want, what it is that I need. And I'm not creating space for anything other than that. But it's painful because it is creating a disconnect with the people that I love. And unfortunately, I would rather, in this space in my life right now, I would rather be self-loyal. And I shouldn't say unfortunately. Let me take that back. So rewind. I'm going to take out unfortunately, but I am in a space in my life where I would rather be self-loyal and be alone than to continue to create space for people that are not giving me the nurturing and the support that I need. And while it's sad and uncomfortable, it's also very empowering to myself. And it makes me feel more whole because I'm not betraying myself and I'm not betraying what I need for other people. And it's another level, I think, of growth that should be celebrated. But because it feels sad and it feels uncomfortable, you don't really want to celebrate. But I just want anyone going through this contrast or calibration period to know it's uncomfortable as fuck, but you deserve to celebrate you if you are being self-loyal, because it is a hard thing to do, especially in today's society, is to be self-loyal. It's a hard thing to do. I was thinking about this today. I went to a networking event and I met this therapist that sent an email like, oh, great meeting you at this networking event. This is a random story that really has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I want to share it because it has to do with being self-loyal. She actually says in the email, she lists all of her social media links, and then she said, oh, and I probably seem silly on TikTok, even though I'm a therapist, but my social media manager said that this is the way to like gain more followers, and I want to reach a broader audience. So if you're getting to know someone or introducing yourself to someone, the fact that you had to even put that means that you being silly on TikTok isn't in alignment with what you believe if you felt like you had to explain that to me. So that is not being self-loyal, because you clearly don't think that it's okay that you're doing this if you have to have a disclaimer. And so don't do it because society tells you you have to do it. Don't do it because this is what you do to blow up or go viral on social media. People are betraying themselves and what they feel is right for them every single day. And so being self-loyal sometimes means going against the grain. Being self-loyal sometimes means doing something different than what society says you should be doing. Being self-loyal sometimes means going in a separate direction than the people in your life that you love. And sometimes that sucks. But no one talks about it. But I am. You know that I have to talk about the stuff that no one else is talking about because it's a real thing. And if we don't talk about it, then people wonder, what am I doing wrong? Why is healing such a beautiful, transformational metamorphosis for everyone else, but it's fucking painful for me? So I just want someone to know, that someone that may be going through this to know, you are not alone. It is uncomfortable. It is disappointing. It is painful sometimes to have to separate from people that you love to be self-loyal. And it makes you want to turn around and say, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to stop therapy. I'm going to stop healing. I'm going to stop coming to sound baths because now I can't ignore my intuition. My intuition has become so strong and so on point. I can't ignore it, but I want to hold on to this person, this pattern, and I'm just going to stop my healing. I've healed enough. I'm good. And that's it. No. Like, you owe it to yourself. Like, if you've came this far, and I'm talking to myself too, because obviously I'm noticing a lot of contrast in my life, and you owe it to yourself. You've gone this far. You owe it to yourself to keep going with your growth, with your healing, with honoring yourself and your desires. And that contrast period, I feel like, is like that moment of like, okay, I'm going to cancel therapy. I've done enough therapy. I've done enough sound baths. I've done enough healing. I've done enough whatever. And people turn around. They turn around and resort to old patterns, and they stay in situations that are not serving them. And sometimes they maybe they don't turn around and go back, but they're like, okay, I'm done healing for now. Let me just hang out in this space. But I think for me, there's a little hump that I have to get over right now. There's a little hump I have to get over. And this is the space where I feel like you want to like throw in the towel. But when you want to throw in the towel, I heard this term a long time ago that I always refer back to. It's hardest right before the finish line. It's the hardest right before the finish line. So what if you keep going a little bit further and get over that hump, push through that last little bit, because the finish line is literally in sight. And you know when you've crossed a space where you're like completely at peace and you're just like, okay, I'm at peace, let's hang out here. But if you're feeling uncomfortable and you're like, let me hang out here because I don't want to do any more work, that's an indication that the contrast was too uncomfortable and you are basically throwing in the towel. Did all of that make sense? I'm not really sure if that makes sense, but basically I feel like when we're in that contrast period, it's basically wavering, and like sometimes we tend to shift our mood, we shift our vibe, we shift our energy to accommodate others instead of being really grounded in who we are, how we feel, what we desire. And it's like we have that little inner voice that's saying like, this doesn't feel good, this doesn't feel right. But we psych ourselves out to hold on to people because we love them. And the more that we do that, the more we're being disloyal to ourselves. And I know that this resonates with, clients and friends. And I mean, it's what I'm feeling in my heart today. So this is what I wanted to talk about, because I'm in a chapter in my life where I know what I need is supportive, nurturing, and emotionally safe people. And the people in my life are just, they're not nurturing. And I had to really set a boundary for myself that I can't be around these people and I can't engage with them but so much, because I don't want to walk away from situations feeling empty and depleted. With the challenges I've had in my life, I need situations that are pouring into my cup. And if my connections are not pouring into my cup, then I'd rather spend time alone. And that's a boundary that I had to set for myself, because I am clear on what I need, which is support, nurturing, and emotional safety. And when I set that boundary for myself and really honored that that is what I need, I looked around at the people in my life and I'm like, there's so much contrast, because this doesn't feel supportive. This doesn't feel nurturing. This doesn't feel emotionally safe. It feels like dissonance. And when it's people that you love and care about, it's hard because you don't want that dissonance. But I had to really honor what it is that I need. So when you have those moments, it's like, okay, what do you do? Do you deal with the contrast and dissonance? Or do you honor what you need and distance yourself to really honor your peace, balance, and bliss? I think in the past, I would deny the dissonance. I would still be around the people and tell myself, oh, you're just tripping. But I'm not doing that anymore. I am being self-loyal. This is a chapter to be self-loyal and honor my peace, balance, and bliss. And, when I very, very, very first started my healing journey, I started by journaling a lot. I got a bullet journal and I would actually write down what different interactions felt like to me. So on a scale of 1 to 10, like, this didn't feel good. This felt really, really amazing if it's a 10. And then, 5 is obviously neutral. So like what drains my cup, what depleted my cup, what filled my cup. So a 5 is just neutral. Your cup is the same. Anything under a 5, draining your cup. Anything over a 5, it's adding, it's pouring into your cup. And I really started to notice, because sometimes we are in autopilot and we don't even know what is going on. But as you start to connect to your body and connect to your intuition, you start to pay more attention to what something feels like. And if it doesn't feel good, then I'm not creating space for it. The work that I'm doing right now in building my my studio and everything that I'm trying to accomplish, I don't have space for anything depleting my cup. I don't. Like, I seriously do not. I need every ounce of energy in my cup. So when I realized, like, these connections don't feel good, these connections are not pouring into my cup, but it's hurtful to notice this because these are people that I love, but I had to really honor myself. And that's the space that I'm in right now. And I think that obviously everyone is going to have to answer these questions for themselves. But when it comes to family, it's like, do I minimize the amount of time I spend with family? You know, when it comes to friends, like, do you choose to hang out with them or do you spend more time alone? And then when it comes to partners and spouses, it's even more complicated. You know, like, this is a person that you're in a romantic relationship with or even a marriage, but like, what do you do when you see contrast of this is what I truly want and this is what I have? And I think that my therapist actually pointed out to me that I make excuses for people to hold on to them, like dating wise, and I give up on what it is I truly desire, or I romanticize and tell myself that I'm getting what I want, but I'm actually not. And so I no longer do that. And it's a process. I'm still working on it and I catch myself these days. But I think it's a trauma adaptation that we created to cope with our situations and our environments. And, you know, think about children. Think about children where, you know, their imagination is so vivid and maybe they're in school, but they're dreaming about being, you know, in like Willy Wonka chocolate factory, and like their pencil is actually a Twizzler, and like, you know, imagining things. Like, we legit do that as adults. We imagine things to be a certain way so we can cope and stay peaceful in our situations. But a lot of times we're lying to ourselves. And I was just finishing up a book. I just finished a book where she was saying, like, we lie to ourselves so much, and like part of shadow work is identifying where you're lying to yourself. And I think saying, you know, you're lying to yourself sounds harsh, and I think people will kind of reject that thought or theory. But think about the self-awareness episode where the statistics actually state that only 10 to 15% of people are actually self-aware. So doing shadow work is really just becoming self-aware of your stuff and like where you could be lying to yourself because of a coping mechanism. And I don't know about you, but I want to know where I'm not being honest with myself. I want to know where it's a trauma adaptation, because those are the things that hold us back. And we have to identify them so we can release them, so we can step into the abundant life that we desire, so we could have the love that we desire. So for me, I'm like, I am no longer making excuses for people to hold on to them. I am no longer shifting and waving to fit in someone else's comfort zone. I'm not. I'm going to be me. I'm going to be grounded in who I am, my values, and really honor what it is that I need and desire. And I'm going to listen to my intuition. You know, I think when it comes to people in your life, like, definitely have the conversation with them to give them an opportunity to grow with you. And if they don't stop your growth for them, because that is you betraying yourself. And like I said, this chapter, especially for me, I don't know about you, M&Ms, but this chapter for me is about being self-loyal. And the more that I become self-loyal, the more that I respect like other people being self-loyal, the more that I establish boundaries, the easier it is for me to respect other people's boundaries. And it's a beautiful thing. I think that in the past, I used to have a sensitivity to rejection, and that's my abandonment issues. And so my sensitivity to rejection is, it comes from trauma. So the more that I honored my own boundaries, the less I got offended or hurt or disappointed by someone else's boundaries. I would take it as like, oh, they don't have time for me. Like, that would make me sad. But I'm like, no, this person needs their time. They need their whatever. Like, I honor that, because I now honor my own boundaries. So it's all intertwined. Do you see how everything is just intertwined? Our brains, our bodies, our intuition is so fascinating to me. It literally is all intertwined. So I want you to start to notice the contrast. I want you to start to notice the dissonance in your life and in your body, because you can feel it. You can feel it in your body. And that is what I am focused on with somatic sound therapy, my healing modality, to really help people start to notice the sensations in their body, because we can point out the contrast and how it shows up in our body. We can notice the dissonance in our lives and how it shows up in our body. So every ache, every pain, every physical ailment is communicating something to you. So we have to listen. We have to listen to what our bodies and our intuition is communicating to us. And one thing that I committed to is I am done hiding who I am. All right, M&Ms, like I am so serious. I am done hiding who I am. I'm done hiding my truth out of fear that people will leave me. I am done with my trauma adaptations. I'm done romanticizing. And I've said on this podcast so many times, it's literally a rom-com in my head. But I don't want it to be in my head anymore. I want it to be my reality. I'm done gaslighting myself, thinking I could turn my fun friends into compassionate and supportive friends. I'm done thinking I can turn fuckboys into husbands. I'll make sure I put the explicit on this episode. I'm done thinking that, because I'm magical, because I'm definitely magical, don't get me wrong, but I'm done thinking that because I'm just this magical purpled hair mermaid goddess of a being, that I can change people into what I want them to be. It's not fair to them, and it's also not fair to me. So I need to be directing my magic towards my certifications, my trainings, my creations, and really accepting my reality for what it is, and accepting the people in my life for who they are, but really honoring what it is that I need. I want nurturing, loving friends. And if the person is not loving and nurturing, rather than holding on to them and trying to get them to be, I think I sprinkle my little, fairy dust on them and they turn into this thing, but they really don't. It's just like, the freaking rom-com in my brain where I have a million besties and a freaking super handsome man that adores me. Like, it's time for it to get out of my head and into my reality. But in order for that to happen, I have to be really honest with myself about my reality. And I can't turn my friends into compassionate people if they're not trying on their own to be compassionate. I can't turn fuckboys into divine masculine men with honor, integrity, and respect. I can't, sprinkle some little glitter dust and that happen. So like me noticing the contrast of like, wow, like taking off those rose-colored glasses and noticing the contrast and noticing the dissonance. Sometimes that moment is like, wow. But when we notice it, we have a decision. We have a decision to make. Keep holding on to these things that are not exactly what we want, or create space to allow in what we want in our reality and not just in our heads. Do you feel me? Let me know if you feel me. Reach out to me on Instagram at Niajae, Niajae, and let me know if you feel me on this. And I am committed to honoring my vision and making it a reality. So, like I said, I want nurturing and loving friends. I want a man in his divine masculine that adores me and wants to do life together, you know? And I want a community of people that never feel alone. We support each other. We encourage each other. We hold each other accountable. That's what I want. I'm clear on that vision, and I'm done ignoring or romanticizing when I see contrast. It's going to be uncomfortable to not give in to the contrast, you know, and like go back to hold on to people. And it might even get a little lonely, but I am committed to my vision. I am committed to self-loyalty. I'm committed to my inner peace and honoring my deepest desires, honoring my balance and honoring my bliss, because I deserve it. And you listening, you deserve it as well. So stop settling. When you notice the contrast, pay attention to it. We ignore it because we want to hold on to our old lives. So when you start to notice the contrast, that is your new life, the like your higher self knocking at your door, literally knocking at your door. So are you going to ignore that knock, that call, so you can stay in your in the old version of you and your life? Or are you going to answer that call, notice the contrast, notice the dissonance, and create space for that new version of you and that new version of your life and that new version of the connections in your life? What are you going to do? So stop settling, know your worth, and honor what it is you truly desire. Honor what it is you truly desire. You deserve it. You are worthy. You are enough to attract exactly what it is that you desire. And I needed this message too. I'm going to go back and listen to this because I need this message too. And there's so many times I've gone back because I wanted to hold on to people. I wanted to hold on to the old version of my life. I'm not doing it anymore. So join me in self-loyalty. All right, M&Ms, sending you so much love and yummy vibes. Until next time, be decadent. Thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. I would love to hear from you. Leave your comments and questions, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our yummy episodes. Every time you leave a 5-star rating or review, I do my happy dance.